Saving honeybees from the imaginary beepocalypse. All right, so I'm like a tomato, a determinate tomato that goes all over the place. I have many, many stems. I love debunking, and I have a main stem, which is to debunk the fallacy of the financial planning fraud that's perpetrated that we can't retire in America. That's my number one thing. But I have other stems, other shoots, if you will. The CO2 will debunk the CO2 narrative that CO2, we're all going to die in this mass desertification of the United States and fiery pit of hell. It's nuts, man. It's just, think about the absurdity of it all. All right, let's just say the global warms and the ice caps melt. How does that lead to desertification? It does. It just, come on, stupid. Part two of this, we debunk the fallacy of, the commie, where we all got to, what, and I don't want to say more because I'll get banned. There is so many different fallacies that scare it never, ever stops. So let's debunk this about the bees because somehow it be gone into the vernacular that bees are dying off and we need to do something. Of course, something is more and more big government. All right, so saving pollinators from an imaginary bee apocalypse. And if we look at YouTube, they actually have a video from YouTube. It doesn't say how many people about vanishing of the bees. And who's in it? Ellen Page. Anytime you get a famous Hollywood person, you know it's all left-wing tripe. The documentary takes a piercing investigative look at the economic, political, and ecological implications of the worldwide disappearance of the honeybee. Now, this is only September 11, 2020. The film examines our current agricultural landscape and celebrates the ancient and sacred connection between man and the honeybee. It highlights the positive changes that have resulted from the phenomenon known as the colony collapse disorder. Vanishing of the bees unfolds as a dramatic tale of science and mystery, illuminating the extraordinary crisis and greater meaning about the relationship between humankind and Mother Earth. The bees have a message, but will we listen? We didn't listen. It's just freaking nuts, man. So let's read this because these guys are all just full of crap. Who's that David Attenborough guy with the seals being chased off? They're like jumping to their deaths off some cliff, and it turns out they were being attacked by bears. That's just freaking nuts. These guys are all full of crap. Dateline, this was written on April 13th. Honeybees are doing okay, despite some Varroa mites, the COVID-driven economy, and other problems. A torrent of media stories from 2013 and 14 presented frightening tales of unprecedented colony collapse disorder among honeybees, conjuring up visions of a bee apocalypse in a world without bees, in which flowers and agriculture would be decimated because they can't pollinate. I got, let's see, what do I got out there? Tons of butterfly bushes, tons of hollies, tons of tomatoes, tons of blueberries, you name it. I got lots of pollinating, and we love our bees. So put in your pipes. So you don't love you don't love nature. I love nature, but I also love freedom too, and they can coexist. It's amazing. Many articles blame neon icotinoid pesticides, while others added climate change, of course, and biotech GMO crops as culprits. Some mentioned Varroa destructor mites and various viruses and diseases as possible causes. Virtually none suggested that organic food industry chemicals could be also implicated. The overall tone was deep concern, bordering on hysteria, but it sold papers and airtime. Over the next few years, a number of U.S. Remember this 2013-14. Over the next few years, a number of U.S. honey producing bee colonies generally and gradually increased, though there were bumps in the road. There were 100,000 more hives in 2014 than in 2013, and the number went on a slight roller coaster in subsequent years, up and down in the same range from 1993 to 2012. A recent Department of Agriculture report could ignite new concerns, especially in conjunction with the recent data that show a 4% decline in U.S. bee colony numbers. 2.8 million hives in 2019 versus 2.7 million in 2020. This is a result most likely of the coronavirus-driven economy, though. Indeed, honey production dropped 6%, but honey prices rose slightly to offset some of the lower production sales, scarcity. Almond grove and other pollination revenue went down 18%, and other revenues fell even more sharply, but it's also interesting to note that there were 1,000 fewer apiary workers in 2020 than the year before. And spending on Varroa and other bees disease control declined almost 30%. That largely explains the lower hive numbers. Less people, less fighting the viruses that eat it, and then of course just less demand maybe for honey. I don't know. Also interesting, 4 states, Minnesota, Montana, North Dakota, and South Dakota, accounted for 38% of all honeybee colonies in 2020. Many of them are reliant on canola flowers. Old corn, right? Their honey averaged $1.60 a pound in 2020 versus $6.30 for boutique honey from 4 states, Illinois, Kentucky, New Jersey, and Vermont, which collectively had over just 1% of all U.S. hives. So 34 states had 38% of all hives, and those aren't very populated states either. And they only average $1.6 per pound of honey. Interesting. Well, 4 states, Illinois, Kentucky, New Jersey, and Vermont, much more heavily populated, at least Illinois, New Jersey, they collectively had just over 1% of all hives. Even more fascinating is the trajectory of the U.S. honeybee colony numbers over the past 5 decades, showing no connection to neonics, other pesticides, or much of anything else. So let's click on this and see what it shows us here, shall we? This is USB chart 2021.pdf. Interesting. I wish they'd put it so we could, oh, look at that. U.S. producing honeybee colonies, 1996, 2.5 million. Oops, okay. Can I go back? All right, well, I guess we'll have to get that later. All right, so we'll come back to that. The all-time high for U.S. honeybee hives was in 1977 at 4.3 million colonies, and it was 6% higher than in 1972. It then plummeted by 25% in 1986 and hasn't been above 3 million since 1992. The all-time low for U.S. honeybee colonies was in 2008, 5 years before the beepocalypse, because it takes time for them to say, oh my goodness, it takes time for them to get everyone scared. It gets even harder to decipher recent bee problems when you realize that the varroa mites didn't even arrive into the United States until 1987. So the all-time low was in 1986, before the varroa mites even came here. But U.S. honeybee colony numbers have been consistently in the 2.5 to 2.9 million range since then, since the varroa mites came. So obviously the varroa mites did not make it go from 4.3 in 1977 to 2.3 to under 25% in 1986. So what happened? Varroa mites are nasty threats largely because the American European honeybee, unlike his Asian cousin, has no natural defenses. The mites bite into the bees and bee larvae, feed on bee blood, and create pathways in the bees for at least 19 viruses and diseases. Tracheal mites, Noceum intestinal fungi, parasitic phorid flies, the tobacco ring spot virus, and other pests can also cause significant colony losses. Beekeepers can accidentally kill entire hives trying to address such problems, but professionals have become much better at getting treatments and doses right than have most hobbyist beekeepers. As their name suggests, this pesticide are derived from a synthetic nicotine. Some 90% are applied as seed coatings that dissolve and get absorbed into plant tissue as crops grow. They target and kill only pests that feed on the crops. Neonics also largely eliminate the need to spray with other insecticides that can easily harm bees and other beneficial insects. These innovative chemicals have nevertheless been targeted by anti-pesticide groups and by organic food producers that themselves use various crop-protecting pesticides that are harmful to honeybees. Among those organic farm chemicals, pyrethrin, neurotoxin pesticides are highly toxic to bees, possible human carcinogens, and no longer derived from flowers, but are synthetically manufactured, but they're still organic, yay! Nicotine sulfate can partially paralyze bee wings and legs and can be poisonous to humans. Copper sulfate is highly toxic to bees, deadly to fish, bioaccumulative in soil and water, and all around nasty. But it's organic, yay! Changing agricultural and land use practices also play a role, including more houses, factories, and highways replacing flowering trees and open fields that plants which provide pollen and nectar for bees. However, when they see lurid photos of dead bees, people should understand that bees have very short lives. Exactly how long depends on their species and sex, the climate where they live, the food availability, overall bee health in the hive, and what time of year bees emerge from their cell. Queen bees can live 2 to 3 years, even 4 or more, and they lay up to 2,000 eggs a day. Male drone bees live several months during warm weather but die after mating with a queen because their reproductive organs are literally ripped from their bodies. Female worker bees live only 4 to 6 weeks because foraging for food takes them miles every day and wears out their body. They live up to 20 weeks in the winter when their job is to keep the hive warm. Average honeybee colonies hit peak population about 50 to 60,000 in June, but those numbers plummet rapidly in autumn as flowers disappear and cold weather sets in. So dead bees in or around hives is normal, but excellent fodder for fear-mongering. Exactly. As the colony collapse disorder, major bee die-offs were reported in Ireland as far back as 950 AD. The first recorded U.S. case of worker bees suddenly abandoning hives full of honey occurred in 1869. Researchers reported 25 significant die-offs between that one and 2003. So we've been through this. It's just the same thing over and over and over again. It's nuts. The causes are unknown, but die-offs are not unprecedented. Of course, studies have purported to demonstrate the toxicity of neonics, but many were conducted in laboratories, uses dosage and application methods that bear no relation to what farmers do, what bees experience in the real world. They do that all the time. Where they might encounter neonic levels in pollen and nectar measured in parts per billion or trillion, the equivalent of a few seconds and 32 or 32,000 years respectively. Multiple field studies in actual farmers' fields have consistently shown no adverse effects on honeybees at the colony level from realistic exposure to neonics. In fact, bees thrive in and around neonic-treated corn and canola crops in the United States. So bees thrive around canola. I think canola is corn, right? So it's highly surprising that a 2017 article in the respected Journal for Science, not respected anymore, claimed that 2 years of field studies in 3 countries showed exposure to that neon pesticides reduced the ability of honeybees and wild bees to survive winters and establish new populations. The article generated a fury of "I told you so" from the likes of Greenpeace and Pesticide Action Networks, but is no longer available online. Interesting. Why is it no longer available online? Let's take a look. All right, so we're going to look at the 2017 Science article, all right here, we'll type this in. We'll go to Google because they are big lefties and we know they'll give us the left diatribe. So let's see what we got. Hold on just a second. Go to Google. We're going to go 2017. It was the Science magazine, and we're going to put these words in there and see what they say. Okay. Is this it right here? Country study specifics. All right, right here. It looks like this will be it. Let's see if we can see it. Science share. Controversial pesticides can decimate honeybees. Looks like it's still on there. So I'm not sure. Oh, but this is not. This is through a. I'm not sure. What is this? Do they have comments on here? Table contents. And why don't they have yeah, see. I hate when these guys get rid of comments. It's not just left-wing groups like this either, but all right. Well, there's the article. I'm not going to read it just because it bores me. But a separate study of honeybees in Canadian maize fields identified up to 4 months of chronic exposure to whatever that also appeared to have persisted from prior plantings. Again, if we're looking at real-world evidence, this won't make sense. But I'll let you determine your own thing. I don't care. But I saw it right there. So I told you so from Greenpeace and the pesticide. Perhaps because, as I explained in my own detailed assessment, the authors violated multiple guidelines for scientific integrity. Not only did their own data contradict their primary claim, they kept extensive data out of their analysis and incorporated only what supported their conclusions. That's fraud. Actually, let's see. Let's go back here. Let's say, we're going to say fraud. We'll type in the famous word debunk. Debunked. Right here. The data do not support, and this is in Slate. Wow. The data do not support the idea that neonics hurt bees. All right. What does this say? NPR. Popular pesticides are harming bees, but not everywhere. Major new study shows. Okay. So I guess you can harm bees in that pesticide if, let's do fraud, if you do in the lab. Uh-oh, now we got a huge decline in songbirds linked to neon. So I guarantee what happens, the people who produce the neon cottonoids would not pay for advertising in the New York Times, NPR, and stuff. You know what I'm saying? Um, all right, so anyway, let's just keep. It's just look, we can get into this all day long. I don't trust any of these guys. I'm not gonna lie to you. Anyway, so he did his own detailed assessment that the authors were fraudulent. No, not science. That's crazy. When all these missing and doctored data were examined, it's kind of like the Ansel Keys 7 Nations study. He did not use the nations that showed opposite of his research. That's on the food you should take, the low fat, high carb crap that killed many people. When all that is missing, all that missing and doctored data were examined. Of the 258 separate honeybee statistical data analysis involved in the study, 238 found no effects on bees from neonics, and 7 found beneficial effects from the pesticide. Only 3% found harmful impacts, while 4 had insufficient data. So 7 had beneficial, 9 had bads, and then 258 showed nothing. It is vital that we protect our honeybees, bumblebees, and wild bees, but that means understanding history, science, modern agriculture, and bee life expectancy. I just can't take these people. Anyway, I'll let you do your own conclusion. I love honeybees. Big fan, first time, long time. Need them to pollinate. And they just look so good. It looks so good. So the idea that the leftists will never stop. They're always doing stuff to fearmonger you, and they bring on Ellen Pages of the world, and like, who's this chick from YouTube? Is all over the place. Demi Lovato. The whole thing is nuts. And the point is, they're getting their teens. They're going to talk to their parents. And the parents say, "I'm too busy, so whatever, honey." All right, we'll see you.